people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
What the hell is going on, everyone? Lovely to see you all. I hope you're having a good Saturday, a recreational coffee, perhaps, or maybe it's still Friday night where you are. If you're lagging behind in the past, maybe you're enjoying a recreational beer or a nighttime coffee. Who knows? But thank you all for being here. We've got an interesting show today, a big show. We've got lots to get into. It might be a longer one, maybe pushing the 2-hour mark, but we're going to be talking about Israel. And this is something that I think a lot of people are aware of. It's a tough topic to talk about for sure. And it's something that has been on my mind for a long time. I've wanted to talk about it, but like I said, it's a tough thing to talk about because you have to speak about it carefully. And there are people talking about it, but I do think a lot of the way a lot of people talk about it is quite inflammatory. And I think it implicates a lot of people who don't deserve it. So today's show, honestly, was probably triggered by the fact of what happened in Bondi about a week ago. That's what really kind of pushed me to pull the trigger to actually talk about this. And we're going to be looking at a few different sources to talk about it. But again, let's just be clear at the start, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. When we speak about these kind of things, I think it's important to realize who we're actually talking about here. When people talk about Israel, I think, look, I can only speak for myself, okay? We're not talking about all Jewish people, okay? That's ridiculous to implicate all Jewish people. So when people are on big platforms going, it's the Jews, that is inflammatory. And I actually think it is playing into the hands of the chaos and division that these systems thrive out of, okay? So I think we need to be careful with our language, and we're going to get into this a little bit more. I'll talk a little bit deeper on that in a moment. But we're going to look at a clip from the chief editor of the Australian National Review, and I want to show you guys his take on the Bondi Massacre. And he talks about the illusion of left and right politics as well, and how this is. I mean, we all know, most of us know, or I hope you know, that these are basically two wings of the same bird. They're part of a system. They require each other to survive and to function. They create friction that progresses their agenda. Okay, without the other side, there would be no there would be no progress. Right? They literally require each other. So we're going to get into that to start off the show, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about what's going on here. Firstly, though, Lloyd Roger Spencer, you little freak, thank you for becoming a member. Oni9481, you are a freak as well. Thank you very much. Yvonne, thank you for the $3. And 420 Breezy says, how y'all doing? Did y'all see the files? I did hear that the Epstein files came out just recently, and I've also heard that they are quite heavily
redacted,
which is no surprise. But look, you know what? That might even make a good follow-up stream to this one. But let's jump over here. Actually, no, we're going to jump over here to get.
Eventually, people are going to say, what?
No, we're not. It's not over yet. No, we haven't been kicked off the air by the Khazarian Mafia yet. We are looking at Jamie McIntyre. So this, like I said, chief editor of the Australian National Review, and he put out a pretty, he didn't hold back with this video here. And I think, given, this has kind of happened in Australia recently, it's a good place to start. He says, anyone who doesn't think Israel is behind the Bondi Massacre, I'll toss you your house for it. Put up or shut up is the saying. Research the truth, or best be quiet until. Too many sprout off their undying belief in fake news media and are too lazy to critical think and figure out how the world works. It's called dumbed down Westerners, which Israel relies on to achieve political outcomes. Now, again, I'll say here that I don't necessarily agree with every single thing that he says in this video, but for the most part, I do. But I will say as well, the one thing that I'm not a fan of, and I think this is what we all need to work on, is that when we talk about these topics, we need to work on being less emotional and more sort of pragmatic and logical in our approach to things. Because, and by the way, it's very easy to get emotional, right? That's literally the point of a false flag. The false flag is designed to elicit emotion, to then deliver you their desired result or solution. Okay. So we need to try and not be angry and think about this logically. Okay. Let's take a listen.
Good morning, folks. Jamie McIntyre here on behalf of the Australian National Review Independent Media out of Australia. Left and right politics, Bondi Massacre. Now what you're starting to see predictably is that left-wing politics in Australia, the Albanese government, it wants to blame right-wing extremists. They're the dangerous threat to society. And then the right-wing politics wants to blame the left-wing government for allowing mass immigration into Australia. But neither side of politics is addressing the real common enemy of Australia now and of the West, which has been a common enemy for some time, and that is the people behind the massacre. Now, of course, we know, even without being a geopolitical expert, if you're not a geopolitical expert and this is not what you do for a living, like some of us, then you at least know that the official narratives they always give turn out to be a lie. Now, you should know that up front by now, because the stories they give you, they always have someone's ID and they release someone's address with a picture of the Australian driver's license.
That was interesting, right? We had this guy's ID like within hours. It was circulating online. I would say within 2 hours, this guy's ID was circulating online. That is crazy, because there's no investigation has taken place. They're probably still rushing people to hospital. And his ID is out online and we've confirmed who it is, okay? Now, I'm not saying it's not true that it wasn't him, but the way that it happens is almost like a movie script. And if you remember back to 9/11, jet fuel, which apparently defied, all understanding of engineering, was able to melt steel beams. The biggest towers in the world were taken down. Yet conveniently, the passport was found perfectly intact just around the corner, and we were able to figure out who it was. It's the same move. It's the same thing. Pattern recognition. Okay, this is what we need to think about here. We need to not be emotional and just look for patterns.
So quickly, it's like September 11th, right?
Oh,
the passports are still intact. Here it is, straight away. Like, if you're going to go and do a massacre, yeah, I'm sure you carry your ID with you just so you can be easily identified, so the media can tell you who it is straight away without any proper investigation. You know that's a total setup when that's happening anyhow, because if it was a proper investigation, how can it be a proper investigation? Did you realize that the Israeli government has taken over the New South Wales police investigation into this matter? Hang on a minute. So the prime suspect in most globalist terror attacks, about 95% of terror attacks are caused, and terrorism was created and invented by, you-know-who, Israel. They're now taking over the investigation.
One thing that's interesting as well, like, I don't know if you guys remember, I think it was like at the end of last year or sometime last year in 2024, there was, I can't remember who it was. In fact, I think Tim Burchett was heavily involved in this idea and trying to make this public and stop it. But the fact that there was like millions of dollars getting sent to the Taliban from America, like every week or every month. And he was trying to work out, like, why is this going on? And it kept happening. So this is a thing, right? There is lots of money coming from Western countries into these Middle Eastern countries that are supposedly the enemy. Yet they're being funded from this side. When you say make it make sense, this is what this video is about, okay? This is what this video is about, is trying to get you to see, trying to come up with a theory as to how this makes sense. And this is all this is, by the way, just a theory. You could even say it's a conspiracy theory, but I'm not going to say that it's truth. But again, pattern recognition.
Investigation. It's not half obvious who did it. Okay, so the prime suspect in a mass murder case against Australians is going to be, the prime suspect's going to handle the investigation. I'm sure you're going to get to the truth. Bottom line is, left-wing governments are left-wing Zionist controlled. Right-wing governments in the West, including in Australia, right faction Zionist control, the Netanyahu crew, which you expected. If I'm conservative politics, right? I'm centre-right. I'm expected, us on the right are expected to stand with Netanyahu. We're expected to support the bombing of children daily. So they get really upset when those of us on the right go, no. We're critical of that. We're decent human beings that actually have values, have honour and principles. And we've been taught, even as Christians, that they shall not kill. They shall not kill thy neighbor either. They shall not lie. That perhaps, just perhaps, we can discern that dropping bombs daily on innocent children and blowing them to pieces and thinking that's going to equal peace in the Middle East, by pieces of children blown everywhere for their parents to collect them and put them back together to bury them, that somehow is what we should stand for. So I really question the people that still stand for Israel. You are either evil, which I know many of you aren't, because I have friends, some of them still foolishly stand with you. It's kind of like the people that I tried to tell, don't do the vaccines, it's a fraud, stay away from the COVID vaccines, or stay away from vaccines in general even before that. You know, it always turns out that we seem to be right, but people don't want to listen, because ignorant people are arrogant, generally. Ignorant people are arrogant. They will defend the fake news media. They will defend September 11th narrative. They will defend the fake October 7th narrative that Hamas did this all by themselves, and Hamas let himself across the border. Hamas moved the Nova Festival 48 hours before to next to the border. That Hamas was able to get the IDF sent to the West Bank and stand down orders, and Hamas jumped in and borrowed some Israeli army tanks to blow up Israeli settlers and kill Israelis that day. Or Hamas must have just jumped in some Apache helicopters and burnt to crisp hundreds of cars, which killed most of the Israelis that day at the Nova Festival. And then Hamas invented the stories of baby beheading and baking babies in ovens and raping girls and focus tested that on you beforehand. No, that's right, that was Israel. And Hamas was created by itself? No, that was created by Israel. Hamas was funded by itself up to 2012? No, that was funded by Israel. Hamas got Qatar to beg Israel to keep funding them since 2012. No, that was Israel that begged Qatar to keep funding them. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, he didn't shuffle $35 million US dollar notes a month to Hamas to keep funding them. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in 2019 didn't publicly state that if we want to achieve Israel's political objectives, which by the way is the Great Israel Project, which is taking over all those nations through genocide. And
this is what we need to talk about. Like, when we talk about this, it needs to be spoken about as, instead of saying it's the Jews, which, like I said, implicates too many good-hearted, innocent people, we need to talk about like the Greater Israel Project, because that's what this is. When people are speaking about this, people need to realize, like, we are talking about the governments of these countries. We are not talking about the innocent people who are just as subject to the propaganda and the brutality as the rest of the world. I want to make that clear. People who say like it's the Jews, maybe their intentions are in the right place, but their statements are far too inflammatory, and they are just creating more division and chaos, which is what this system requires to survive.
And bombing, we must continue to support Hamas. So if you don't think that it's a big stretch for Israel that snipers children, innocent children in the head, not once but twice, not accidental but deliberately, in Gaza on a daily basis, to send one of their former IDF soldiers or hitman or hire their Islamic terrorism, because ISIS was created by Israel, Al-Qaeda was created by Israel, Hamas. If you don't know that, then the question is, stop being so arrogant, because you clearly don't know shit. Then if you don't think they're going to sniper kids in the head on Bondi Beach or adults, then you're being deeply misled. If you think Israel won't slaughter Jewish people to serve their own political agenda, Jewish people in Australia, you are deeply asleep. If you stand with the Netanyahu government, the evil regime of Israel, why? Most Israel.
He got cut off. Maybe they got to him. Look, again, I think he's obviously quite upset and he's getting emotional there towards the end. And again, he's obviously from Sydney. He probably lives close to Bondi. Again, I get it. But I feel like if you are going to speak about this on a public forum, you need to try and wind that in and just stick to the facts. And that is why the main video of today is so compelling. It's because it is out, like, what is actually going on here from the history to the present day and what is going to happen in the future is outlined very eloquently with no emotion and just very clearly outlining the facts. And that's why I felt comfortable to show you guys this video and what we're going to look at today. Jen says, you must not have much experience with many Jews, Josh. A lot of the regular Jews share the viewpoint of their government. No, so I think you're just missing the point of what I'm saying, Jen, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if one Jew shares the point of the government or 1,000 or 500,000. When you say Jews, you're talking about all of them. And that's just inherently wrong, because it's not all of them, is it? Right? So it doesn't matter how many do or don't. You can't paint them all with the same brush, because you are then playing into the hands of anti-Semitism, which is part of the Greater Israel Project, as you're about to see. We need to work out a way here to like think logically, speak carefully, and avoid playing into the hands of division, because that is part of the plan, is making people fight amongst each other and hate each other. And they will continue to do that if they can't actually see where the real enemy is. Okay, this really does require people to kind of set emotion aside, look at the facts. It's not Jews are running the world, because that is just a lazy, low IQ take, in my opinion. And it just plays into the hands that and makes the machine thrive, right? And equally, I want to say, people who are saying like, get all Muslims out, get the terrorists out, all the Muslims, that is equally retarded, in my opinion, because some of the most like kindest and gentle people that I know have been Muslim. Okay, so again, to say that and paint them all with the same brush is just playing into the hands of those who gain order out of chaos. So we need to be careful about how we speak about this, and I think referring to it as the Greater Israel Project is the best way that we can delineate that we are not talking about regular people here. We're not talking about good-hearted people. We are talking about a global control cult that is trying to subvert and manipulate the world into progressing their own agenda. And that is what we're going to get into in this video. Again, and it's not a simple topic, right? This is not a simple topic. So, if you have a simple mind, you may struggle with this, and that's okay. But I would just encourage you to just like let this stuff sink in. It is extremely deep, and it requires you guys to undo some of the mental like manipulation and propaganda that we've all been subject to, right? Do you remember that speech from Carl Nell where he said the problem is unlearning? Like, you can't, the information that we're going to look at in this video, it's not going to compart with the worldview that you've built based on like just normal Western society and the news that you've grown up watching. It's not going to compart with that. So you have to be prepared to kind of rip up the floorboards and potentially lay down some new carpet here, because this is kind of reality shattering in a way. I'm going to be real. And if you, I'm not even going to say you have to believe everything in this video. If you find yourself like getting upset while you're watching it and hearing these things, then I would encourage you to turn it off, because division is the last thing that I want from this. It's not why I'm streaming this. I don't like streaming this kind of stuff. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable, if I'm honest. But also knowing this and feeling like there is truth to it, in my opinion, it makes me feel even more uncomfortable staying silent when I have a platform to tell people about it. So that also makes me really uncomfortable to just feel like this is actually happening, and I'm not doing anything about it. So like I said, if you feel like you're getting uncomfortable and you're getting upset, turn it off. But I think at the very least, if you find it hard to swallow, I think this is important to just be aware of it. Even if you're finding this too much to take in and believe, just listen to it and maybe see how this framework applies to the future events as things begin to unfold. So again, I want to just repeat that. You don't have to believe this. Maybe just hear it and keep it in the back of your mind, just like when we hear about UFO sightings and whistleblowers, okay? Sometimes we're a little bit unsure. We don't know how to take them. And I always say, you don't have to believe them, but maybe just keep it in the back of your mind. And when new information comes out, the things that whistleblower said or the things that we're about to hear in this video, you might be like, okay, wow, I can actually like this, what they said is true. Like this is happening. So I think you should apply the same logic to what you're about to see in this video. And, just so you guys know, like the idea that Israel is, willing to take out some of its own people to further its own agenda. This is something that like the Israeli people and government, its factions of the government are very aware of. And even we're going to watch a clip in a moment. Only a month ago, they called out Netanyahu to his face. This is like literally 6 weeks ago. And you will never see this on our news because our news outlets are largely controlled or at least heavily influenced by Israeli money. And again, that just takes a little bit of research and to kind of see that, right? That's just is what it is. So let's just take a look at this clip. You will need to keep an eye on the subtitles because it's not in English. It only goes for 2.5 minutes though. But it's titled, Israeli government officials are openly accusing Netanyahu for October 7, the world knows.
אני מאשימה אותך, בנימין נתניהו. מאשימה אותך בטבח ה7 באוקטובר. האסון הגדול ביותר שידעה המדינה קרה במשמרתך. גם אם אתה ישן עם מצפון נקי, לא נשכח לך, נזעק את ההפקרה, תקום ועדת חקירה ממלכתית. אני מאשימה אותך, בנימין נתניהו, במימון החמאס, בבניית הטרור, ועצימת העיניים האיום הקיומי עלינו, בהפקרת ביטחון המדינה כמדיניות. ביטחון הוא לא אינסטרומנט פוליטי, שמעת? הוא מעל הכל. אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו, הפכת את הציבור העובד והמשרת לחמורו של משיח. יצרת את ברית ההשתמטות והסיפוח. גבורת הלוחמים נעלמה מעיניך, אבל לא מעינינו. היא האור שאיתו נבנה מחדש. אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו. השחיתות האישית שלך הפכה למכת מדינה. כל מושחת הופך שותף. ככל שיש לך תיק יותר גדול על מישהו, הוא יותר נוח לך. משפט של איש אחד לקח מדינה שלמה כבת ערובה. אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו, כי שכחת מה זה להיות יהודי. טראמפ החזיר חטופים במקומך, בזמן שאתה, בלי חשומה, התעסקת בלרתום אותו לחנינה. עשרות חטופים נרצחו ונהרגו בשבי, כשאתה לא קיימת את מצוות פדיון שבויים, חסר מצפון ובלי אלוהים. אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו, הגזענות תמיד שירתה אותך. קראת אותנו מבפנים, הפכת חצי עם לאויב. אז נתניהו, אני המרוקאית, המסורתית ממגדל העמק אומרת לך, אנחנו נשבור את החומות שבנית, אנחנו ננקה את הרעל ששפכת פה 30 שנה, אנחנו נחזור להיות חברה מאוחדת. אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו, רוצחים פה אזרחים כאילו הם אבק אדם, משילות עלק. כשהליכוד מתנהל כמו ארגון פשע, ארגוני הפשיעה מרימים ראש. אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו, כן, בהקרבת החיים עצמם. אנשים גמורים תחת המציאות הכלכלית. לא יודעים איך להיכנס לסופר ולשלם חשבונות. הכל פה הפך יקר. רק החיים תחתיך הפכו לזולים עד כאב.
What a crazy language. Like, do they get a sore throat from all that? That is wild. But look, I don't want to joke around too much today, but I can't help myself sometimes. What a strong woman and what a powerful and emotional deliverance in her speech. And I mean, like, goddamn. What do you guys, look, I'm not trying to like pick on anyone's looks here. But I don't know, man, that face just looks kind of dead. You know what I mean? Like, it just looks like devoid of any empathy. You know what I mean? And, I don't want to, like, I'm aware that my own bias here could be playing into how I feel about how he looks, but I don't know. There is just, sometimes you just get feelings about people. And this motherfucker doesn't look kind. You know what I mean? God damn. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that because, like, maybe someone who's watching this is like, Josh, what do you mean? Like, this is crazy. You're talking about Israel how could they be behind the Bondi Massacre? Well, this is something that even the people of Israel are very aware of and speaking about, but we'll never see that on our media here ever. And like I said, this requires very deep thinking. It requires you to unlearn, and this is complex and it runs very deep. It's much more complex than it's all the Jews, it's all the Muslims. You need to be prepared to kind of rip up the floorboards here. And, I actually touched on this stuff in a different kind of way, speaking about global cults who hide behind or pose as Abrahamic religions to carry out some of the most inhumane acts to sort of maintain control and power over the population. Okay, I spoke about that in the Billy Corgan video in a bit of a different angle, but I think these are all the same people here. This is the same kind of thing. And it sounds like a conspiracy, right? Let's jump back over here. It all does sound very much like a conspiracy, that there is a global control group hiding behind Abrahamic religions to do terrible things to people. But this is literally in the Bible, okay? And I don't think it's ever stopped, to be honest. This is Revelations 3:9. Now, this is in the King James Version of the Bible. It says, "Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie." Now, again, look, the Bible is something that gets interpreted into many different ways, and people kind of have their own takes on it. But I think, again, if we try not to be too specific, like I always say, let's just peel back the layers and try and come to some kind of broad term that we can agree on here. It is speaking about people who do dark, evil things. That's why they're saying, "I'll make them of the synagogue of Satan." They do things that would align with Satan. People who are saying they are Jews, but they are not. Which, again, is super important, right? Because when people say it's the Jews, you are implicating actual Jews with people who are pretending to be Jews and doing terrible things. And that's why language is important here. And we need to be, I think the Greater Israel Project is a far more accurate representation of what's actually going on here. There's just too many innocent people that get caught up when we say it's the Jews. Now, David Icke, who we love to look at on this channel, has been speaking about false flags and this stuff for a long, long time. And he actually put out a video just after the Bondi shootings speaking about it. And it's about half an hour. I actually think I left that one out of the show notes by accident, but I will add it in. But honestly, we might even watch the whole thing another time. But we've got about 6 minutes of it here that I think is another explanation into this global control structure and how deep it runs and related to the Bondi Massacre. So we're going to listen to David Icke, and then we're going to get into the main part of the show, which is about Pax Judaica.
The concept of what I dubbed in the 1990s problem, reaction, solution, and it's also become known as a false flag. This is when you create a situation in which it could be a war, it could be a terrorist attack, could be a banking collapse, could be anything. But you create a problem and you then tell the public the version of that problem that you want them to believe, because you want that reaction from the public of outrage, of fear, of something must be done. This can't go on. What are they going to do about it? And then you, who have covertly created the problem, got that reaction, do something, you then openly offer the solutions to the problems you have covertly created. Now,
they'll call you anti-Semitic for this, Josh, no matter how much you say not all Jews or not real Jews. It's so frustrating. Honestly, that's okay. Like, I don't mind being called that if that's what some people want to do, because to me, it's just someone who either has an agenda or it's someone who is unable to think critically. And I think, like, when you know that you're rooted in like in a good place and all you want is like harmony, survival, people to be kind to each other, when you know like that's where your intentions are rooted, like things like that just don't really bother me.
The events, the horrific events of 9/11 are a wonderful example of problem, reaction, solution at work, where you have an attack on New York and Washington, and you blame Arab terrorists for it, and you say that it was orchestrated by Osama bin Laden, who is being protected by the Taliban in Afghanistan. And so you say, well, that's the problem. The reaction, understandable reaction, 9/11, do something. You then offer the solution, which was the invasion of Afghanistan, followed by the invasions of other Middle Eastern countries.
again, I like the way that he emphasizes there the understandable reaction, right? Because of course people are going to be like just beside themselves when the towers go down or when people get shot up at the most beautiful beach in the country where families go and play with their kids. Of course people are going to, emotions are going to be high. And that is weaponized against us, right? And what has happened? Problem, reaction, solution. Gun laws are getting tighter, as if they weren't already tighter in this country or in Australia. And conveniently, this is right around the time where they're trying to bring in this digital ID in Australia. I think, you know, we should think about these kind of things when these things happen.
And I say this now in response to what has happened in Bondi Beach. You know, one of the hardest things to get across to people over the years has been that just because people claim to be representatives of a certain group of people, it doesn't mean they are. I've exposed and exposed and exposed a global network I call the global cult, which is driving the world to ever greater dystopia, not least through digital AI means currently. And this global cult operates through governments right across the world. It operates through intelligence agencies. It operates through military. And just because someone may be a prime minister or a president of this country or that country does not mean that they are representing the people of that country or have their best interests at heart. You've only got to look through what we call history to see the actions of governments, prime ministers, presidents, and so on, and how they have used their own populations. They have killed and maimed and made their own populations suffer while claiming to represent them.
I think this is the biggest hurdle for people to get over, is realizing that the world is so, like, civilization, society, the world is so much more vast than we can perceive. I think most of us think that, like, look, there's people that are homeless. They're a little bit lower than us. They're sort of down here. You've got a few, you know, remote tribes and stuff like that. Then you've got people who are a little bit wealthier than us. You've got the bosses and the CEOs and the people who kind of run the companies and your Elon Musks. I think the world actually goes quite a bit more beyond that. And there are people who probably look at the society and system that we are all so caught up in, the rat race, as like literally subhuman, as like a lower class of human being, because we are stuck in this system that they control. And I think when, like, if you can come to terms with that idea that that's actually going on, you begin to realize that it's not actually far-fetched, that something that is controlling this system would see people in it as expendable or disposable to further their own agenda of continuing the system and continuing the control. If you owned a pen of sheep and you had to take out a third of them because they were causing trouble, or you just had to do that for the sustainability of your sheep pen, although it might feel like a little hit in the immediate future, in the long term, it works towards your greater goal. I feel like it's the same thing. We look at sheep as, you know, slightly lower than us on some kind of hierarchy. I think there are people in the world who see the general population lower than them, subhuman, in the hierarchy. And having people die on a small or large scale it doesn't really mean anything to them because they're so far removed from us.
Because they don't represent those people.
There you go.
They represent this global cult and its interests. And one of the centers of this global cult's operations, along with, yes, of course, the United States and Europe and Britain and other countries around the world, but one of the major centers is Israel. It was created in 1948 for that specific reason. And to understand the way those that claim to be representing Jewish people operate is to understand that this leadership, this network, is representing not Jewish people, it's representing this global cult. And thus it is quite happy to see Jewish people suffer and die for reasons of ensuring, not least through problem, reaction, solution, that its demands on how society must change are invoked and imposed.
There you go. He's saying it how it is. And this is a fantastic video. Like I said, it goes for about half an hour. We might watch the rest of it in another stream, but I just wanted to give that little bit of context there from David before we get into the main clip, the main video, which is up next. Adam Dev Media says that Trump media merged with TIE Fusion today. Yes, we did cover that in a video yesterday. Thank you, Adam. Benjamin says, respect everyone and everything. Don't fall for the anger fear game, folks. We have something in common with everyone. Well, not everyone. We are human. Just my thoughts. I totally agree, bro. I totally agree. I think it was Michael Masters in his Rogan interview. He put it really nicely and said, we are all humans are just different fingerprints of the same consciousness, which I thought was a really nice way to think about things. Dave Bryson says, I'm well aware, my dude, I'm 42 and been on this shit for years. We have both drawn the same conclusions. My man, love to Ruby, Jules, Suki. Thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate you, bro. I appreciate that a lot. And like I said, again, this video is not designed to create division, fear. We've already got enough of that in the world. It is to just try and make people aware of what is actually potentially going on. This is just a theory. Like I said, this is just a theory, because at the end of the day, knowledge is power. You can't stand up and fight against what you don't even know, right? You have to be able to see it for what it is first before we can actually work out what to do about it. The Jack Hamlet says, just got here, so this feels extremely relevant. Redacted with Clayton and Natalie Morris just had a whistleblower on that talked about ant people. Interesting, Jack. Thank you. I do love the ant people theories, so I'll have to check that out after this. Supercoach says, what arrogance that lizard shows. I think he's talking about Netanyahu. Thank you, bro. Ben says, division of us is the goal. We are all human, in my opinion. Not all the enemy of peace and love are. Ignore the emotional bait. Exactly. Ignore the emotional bait and remember that we are all human. But there are dark things happening in this world. There are dark things playing out in the world that a lot of people don't like to talk about and shy away from. And I understand. I totally get it. But I just think if you ever want your life to change, it's up to you. So if we ever want the world to change, it's up to us, right? Like it's just like if you sit there and think, yeah, look, the world is kind of cooked, but whatever, like that's fine, but it's going to stay cooked. Like it's never going to change. So I feel like we kind of have to talk about it sometimes, unfortunately, otherwise it's never going to change. Dave Bryson, you little freak. Thanks for staying as a member. And he's also gifted 5 memberships. Let's get some love in the chat to just spread some of those good vibes, but also for Dave and the 5 new weirdos. Thank you very much, brother. All right, let's get into the main clip, okay? We've got about 45 minutes here, and this is... Oh, shit, I forgot the name. Sorry. Okay. So I only just found this channel yesterday, by the way. And I found this channel from
So we come.
Jordan Crowder, who I've interviewed on the channel before. Also, he has a podcast called Conscious Observers, and makes a lot of really cool content, very spiritual. And I really enjoy his takes on things. And he put me onto this guy. And this channel is fantastic. So I'm definitely going to be looking at this guy more. And just so you guys know, like I said, everything that we've spoken about so far, this guy outlines it with the emotion removed and with the just very eloquently and very clearly. And to make it even more interesting, this is a lecture being given in a Beijing university. Okay. This is a Beijing university lecture, and he just records these and puts them on his YouTube channel. So I'm going to let him take it away. He is speaking about why things are the way that they are, why the world feels like it is in so much chaos, and where it started, where it's going. And he lays it out all very well. So here we go. Yes, Professor Zhang, thank you very much, Christy.
To the end of the course, and all roads lead to Jerusalem. So we're going to take everything we've learned so far and combine it into a narrative about today and the future. So the grand thesis of this class is that secret societies control the world. And this is something you can never prove, okay? But let me propose a theory of how we can approach the truth, okay? Theory of truth. If you have a theory or an idea or a narrative, and it does these three things, then it approaches the truth. The first is that it connects the past. Okay? So does it help us put the past, things that we know that happened in the past, into a coherent story that we can understand? Okay, that's test number one. Test number two is it explains the present. Does it help us better understand the world we live in? Okay? And the last and the most important is predicts the future. From this narrative, we should be able to make certain predictions about how events should develop. And if these events turn out to happen the way we predict, then we can be more sure that our theory of truth is correct. Now, let's be extremely precise. Just because things turn out the way that we predict doesn't necessarily mean that our theory is 100% correct, okay? Because it's really important to understand that correlation does not necessarily mean causation.
I love how thorough he is. I love how balanced he is. And like he's saying, this is just a theory connecting the past. It explains the present. And again, I think we should all, even if this video upsets you or it sounds crazy, take it in, put it in your back pocket, and let's just see how this plays out and see if it actually does predict the future. And I don't know about you guys, but the sound of like the chalk on the whiteboard or like that tapping is like ASMR for me. I don't know if that's why I enjoy his lectures so much, because I can just hear that but it is, I don't know what it is, but I like it. Toxic Fart says, Suki, thank you for the $2, bro. Texas Bully Mom says, stoked I'm finally able to make a live stream since I'm in the US. Just bought some of your merch too. Merry Christmas and God bless you. Merry Christmas to you too, Bully Mom, and thank you for buying the merch. Guys, there is 20% off at the moment. Weirdo Xmas, use it at the checkout. The link is below if you want to go and get yourself some merch and let people know that they should touch some grass. And Serene, thank you for the $2. I appreciate you very much.
Okay. So that's a caveat. No matter how well we predict the future, it doesn't necessarily mean that our theory is 100% correct. But our theory gives us a model to understand the past, the present, and the future. Okay? So with very little evidence, I'm going to present to you a theory about how the world works, a story about how we got to where we are. And again, this is speculation. Some will call this conspiracy theory. And this is just meant to be a fun class. So take what I say with a grain of salt, okay? Ask good questions, doubt what I say, but what I'll show you is that this theory, even though it doesn't really make much sense and you may not believe it, it does help us connect the past, explain the present, and predict the future, okay? All right, so without further ado, let's go into this theory. So you remember Jacob Frank, who founded the 17th Frankist movement, okay? And he will convert to the Catholic religion, and he will encourage his followers to also follow him into the Catholic religion and also to infiltrate secret societies. One of his friends, one of his patrons, is Mayer Rothschild.
Uh-oh.
Who
Not
is
that
founder,
name.
of course, the Rothschild banking dynasty, which we discussed last class. He will introduce Jacob Frank to another person named Adam Weishaupt in Bavaria, okay, in present-day Germany. All right, now Adam Weishaupt, he is actually a former Jesuit, okay? So he's a member of the Catholic Church. He's also a Jew, okay? And again, we don't have any evidence that these three actually know each other. But this is a theory, all right? So let's assume they knew each other. What they will do together is create a new organization called the Illuminati. And this organization is what controls the world, the Illuminati. Now, there is a legend that Adam Weishaupt, after he created the Illuminati, he encouraged his followers to infiltrate another organization called the Freemasons. And these were extremely prominent members of European society. Okay, these were intellectuals like Goethe, these were nobility, these were bankers.
All
and
your
so
favorite clubs.
This is the framework that controls the world, okay? The Illuminati was able to penetrate the Freemasons, so now you have an alliance of the Jesuits, the Jews, the 17th Frankists, the Catholics, and the Freemasons, okay? And so this is the alliance of secret societies. Now, there is a legend that what happened is that Adam Weishaupt, he was eventually arrested for conspiracy by the authorities. And so the organization, the Illuminati, has been disbanded. But there are others who argue that's not what happened. In fact, it was Adam Weishaupt himself who spread the legend that there was a secret organization called the Illuminati. Okay? So the entire thing was to generate publicity. But in reality, the Illuminati was not disbanded, and it still exists today. So why would they do this? And the reason why is that secret societies, like every organization, depends on publicity for recruitment, okay? So it's free publicity if you read a newspaper that there's a secret organization that's trying to conquer the world and which the authorities don't like. Then a lot of people will be like, how do I join this organization, right? And that's what happened, right? So the irony about secret societies is they have a structure, which is like a triangle, okay? At the very top is the leadership. This leadership is secret. You don't know who they are, you don't know what they do, okay? But they usually come from very noble families. We call these the 13 families, okay? Then at the very bottom are just the public members. And they think that what they do is just good stuff, okay? So the Freemasons, they actually don't know what the leadership does. The key is the middle management, these people, okay? These people are the ones who do all the work. And these people are selected for ambition. In other words, for power, they're willing to sell their souls. All right? Okay, so when you have different secret societies together, a major problem that you have is coordination. And the idea here is you have different leaders, and how do you get them to work together? Also, after these leaders die, how do you ensure that the new leaders will coordinate together? And the answer to this problem is the idea of eschatology. Okay, we'll discuss eschatology. But eschatology comes from the Greek word eschaton, which means the end. So eschatology means your understanding of how the world ends, of how to create paradise on earth. And what I will show you is that even though these different groups have different eschatologies, there are convergence points which allows them to work together. Okay? So let's go over the major eschatologies. And remember, what's really important to understand is that these eschatologies are often secret.
This is where he starts cooking with their eschatologies. This is where he's like, I feel like that first part may have been a bit like, you know, conspiratorial for some people. But this part here is where he really lays out like what's been going on, what's happening right now, and what the end goal of all of this craziness actually is. Pinky Parker says, touch grass, smoke the good stuff, it helps. Thank you very much, Pinky. Adam Dev says, experience with human insecurity makes it make sense. Agree. And Toxic Fart says, so if he says the wrong thing, does that shot collar go off? We'll find out.
Sometimes change, and the details will be different. But so I'm going to present to you more or less a general understanding of different eschatologies, okay? So let's start with the easiest, which is a Jewish eschatology. What do the Jews believe? Well, the Jews believe that because they disobeyed God, because they worshiped false idols, because they sinned, they were expelled by God from their homeland, Jerusalem, to wander the earth, which creates the Jewish diaspora. But eventually what will happen is that a Jewish Messiah will emerge to take the Jews back to Jerusalem, okay? And he will reconstitute the nation of Israel. He will recreate Israel, and then he will rebuild Solomon's temple. Why? Because Solomon's temple is where God lives, and it is where the people of Israel make sacrifices to Yahweh in order to show their devotion to Yahweh. So Solomon's temple is really important. There will be something called the War of Gog and Magog, where basically the entire world unites against Israel. Okay? And the War of Gog and Magog will be led by the Antichrist, the anti-Messiah, the false prophet. We don't know what Gog and Magog represent, okay? What the Bible says is these are people from the north, but that could mean anyone. And certain Jewish scholars have interpreted Gog and Magog to represent Russia and Iran. Okay? This is important because of what's happening today. Okay? But of course, when it seems as though the enemies of Israel, Gog and Magog, when it seems that they are about to win, God will intervene and ensure that Israel wins. And this will usher in something called the Messianic age, when Israel becomes the most dominant nation on earth, when it becomes the light of nations, when it becomes the light of the world. Okay? Does that make sense? So that is the Jewish eschatology, and most Jews believe this. Then you have the Frankists, okay?
So they believe that Russia and Iran represent Gog and Magog, and to usher in the return of the Messiah, which will only happen when the war with Gog and Magog takes place, in which it's said that Israel will lose, and on the cusp of losing, the Messiah will return and save Israel and usher in the Messianic age. That is generally the motivation behind everything that is going on right now.
And the Frankists, Sabbatean Frankists, they make important changes to this eschatology. Okay? The first important change is the Jews believe that the Messiah will come when the time is right. So most rabbis believe that the Messiah will come in the year 6000 in the Jewish calendar, which is about the year 2040 2040 in our calendar, which is about 200 years later, okay? So still a long time away.
Sorry, look, just before he gets into this second eschatology, I think this clip is relevant to bring in now, okay? So we just heard that, you know, the Jews want the return of the Messiah. That's what their whole religion is sort of waiting on and is based on. And they believe that it happened during the war of Gog and Magog, okay, which is potentially Russia and Iran, or at least that's who they think it is. And that's why the world is constantly at war. And that's why we're told that these people are the enemy. This is a clip from 1990 of Netanyahu speaking with a rabbi who I can't remember his name, but just read the subtitles. Read the subtitles. What hasn't changed, however, this is the rabbi saying this to Netanyahu. What hasn't changed, however, is that the Messiah, this is, I believe, Hebrew for Messiah, still hasn't come. So do something to hasten his coming. Netanyahu says we're doing. Rabbi says apparently it's not enough. Since many hours have already passed today and he's still not here. Better ramp it up. Better ramp it up, baby. But there are still a few hours left in the day. So still try for today. And you know, when they say that, I don't actually think they mean today as in like before the sun goes down. I think they probably mean, you know, within this kind of age, within this decade, something more like that is what it feels like. Anyway, I just felt like that clip was relevant. Let's continue on with class.
But the Frankists believe that the Messiah has already come, right? Sometimes Zevi. And then you have Jacob Frank. So they believe that, first of all, the Messiah is already here, okay, which means that the war can start. Second thing that they believe is that you don't wait for God to intervene. You can accelerate the Messianic age by sinning, right? Because by sinning, what you're doing is you are defying Satan. It's Satan who created this world. And by sinning, you're defying his laws, you're defying his authority, and this will create more chaos, and you will reveal how evil this world is. You'll accelerate the collapse, okay, which will force God to intervene. And then during the Messianic age, what will happen is material pleasure. Okay, so rather than everyone being spiritually pure, we'll have a lot of sex. We will have feast. We will live forever. Okay? That's a Frankist interpretation of this eschatology. Okay? Does that make sense? Then you have the Christian Zionists. Okay? The Christian Zionists. I'll explain who the Christian Zionists are later on, okay? But what the Christian Zionists will do is they will take this Jewish eschatology but interpret it in a Christian context, okay? So for the Christians, they believe that, yes, all this will happen, okay? The Jews will establish their Messianic age. But this is really the Antichrist system, okay? The Antichrist, who is the Jewish Messiah, will establish a world government that will dominate the world. And he will establish something called the Mark of the Beast. Mark of the Beast is basically digital ID, okay? So just think of a microchip in your forehead or wherever that, and so you can be tracked, you can be monitored, okay? So basically an AI surveillance system, okay? So this is what the Messianic age of the Jews will look like, but it's the Antichrist system. And eventually what will happen is that the people will rebel against Israel, and this will lead to something called the War of Gog and Magog. Okay? And when it seems as though Israel is about to be defeated in the battle of Armageddon, okay? what will happen is that Jesus will return. Jesus will return, second coming, and he will take all the Christians to heaven. It's called the rapture. And then he will kill a third of the Jews, a third will convert, and this will usher the Messianic age, okay? So this is the Christian interpretation.
Okay.
It's called Christian Zionism. But as you can see, what's really important is the Jews first achieve their eschatology before the Christians can achieve theirs. The Christians need to use the Jews as a tool to achieve the second coming. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. And what's really important is Solomon's temple. Solomon's temple is where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is right now. So in other words, for this eschatology to happen, you will need to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the third holiest site in the Islamic world. And you can imagine how angry Muslims will be. And this might initiate the war of Gog and Magog. Okay? Another important thing about this eschatology that's really important is you need the Jews to return to Israel. And how do you get the Jews to return to Israel? Anti-Semitism. Okay? So
see, this is what I'm talking about at the start of the show today. Anti-Semitism is actually part of this eschatology. It's part of this roadmap. So the Jews return to Israel.
Not only do you have to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is, not very nice, but you also have to promote anti-Semitism around the world to force the Jews to return. That's another part of this plan. Okay? As you can see, this is not a nice plan. It causes a lot of death, it causes a lot of suffering, causes a lot of persecution, but both Jews and Christians believe that for the Messianic age to come, there has to be an age of tribulation, there has to be the Antichrist, there has to be the war of Gog and Magog. Okay, there has to be Armageddon, basically. All right, so is this making sense? Okay, this is again the eschatology, which is a script, which is a plan that these secret societies must implement in order to achieve heaven on earth. The last people I want to talk about are the Freemasons.
Oh, okay? No.
The Freemasons believe that they are, the Freemasons believe that they are of the Enlightenment. Okay? Freemasons. They practice a new philosophy called deism. What makes deism different is that it's an Enlightenment philosophy. So the idea is that God did create the world, the universe. That's why we are here. But then God left. And now, because of free will, free choice, we can do whatever we want. Okay? And our mission is basically to achieve godhood through science, through open debate, through rational thinking. And what are the signs of godhood? How do we know that we've become God? When we're able to do three things, okay? The first thing is to warp reality. Okay? To basically manipulate the essence of matter. And we've been able to do that because of something called the nuclear bomb. Right?
How long ago was this? This was literally uploaded like 24 hours ago, maybe a little bit more.
Right? So we've achieved that.
I think he actually refers to the Brown University shooting.
In other words, the nuclear bomb was a Freemason project to achieve godhood. But not only that, after they achieved the nuclear bomb, they had to use it to show that they are God, right? Because as we discussed before, at the end of World War II, the Americans were firebombing Japan. The war was over. They didn't have to drop the bomb, but they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Okay? That's number one. Number two is,
this gets crazy.
They need to kill a king to show that they are God. Because the king is divinity, right? God gives birth to kings, only gods can kill a king. And who did they kill? JFK.
Yeah.
Again, this is conspiracy theory, okay? And the third thing.
That's it. This is just for entertainment purposes only. This is just for entertainment purposes only. But they killed JFK.
Which a God does is create life. Okay? And this is something that they haven't done yet. We're going to imagine what this is. This is AI. Okay? So these are the 3 missions of the Freemasons, and they've achieved the first 2. They've warped reality by creating a nuclear bomb. They've killed the king, JFK. And the third thing they want to do is create life, which is AI. Okay? In fact, we can also guess where this AI will take place. Why? Because let's look at a map.
This is crazy. This is crazy. Ready?
Okay? Let's look at a map. This is the equator. 33 degrees north of the equator are 4 places. Okay? Now, 33 degrees is very important in Freemasonry. There are 33 degrees in Scottish Rite Freemasonry. It's a very sacred number. All right? So 33 degrees north of the equator, you have 4 places. The first place is Trinity Site, New Mexico in America, which is where they tested the atomic bomb. Okay? You go over across the Pacific to Japan, 33 degrees north is Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All right? 33 degrees north in America is Dallas, Texas, where they killed JFK. So the last mission of Freemasons to achieve their vision for the world is creating AI, right? Now the question is, where would they do it? And the answer is 33 degrees north of the equator, right? And where is that? Jerusalem.
Okay.
So this is...
So the things that he just mentioned that they need to do to become a god, right, is to kill a god, which the Masons, according to this theory, which is just for entertainment purposes only, JFK was shot in Dallas, Texas, which is 33 degrees north of the equator. They detonated the first nuclear bomb, 33 degrees north of the equator. They dropped one on Japan, 33 degrees north of the equator. And they created AI, OpenAI, 33 degrees north of the equator, which he's saying was done in Jerusalem. Now, I checked all of these. They are all within about 1.8 degrees of each other, ranging from like 32.7 to like 34.2 degrees north of the equator. So they are pretty much on point. Now, he's saying the only thing left for them to do out of these things is to create life, create AI, and they're doing it in Jerusalem. Now, I'm sure many of you guys have seen this. Take the ChatGPT logo, flip it, slide it back over the top. Now, I don't know if that is like coincidence number 4,677, but what the fuck? What the actual fuck is that? I mean, when you combine that with everything else that he has just said, I mean, this is what I mean. It becomes very hard to argue. Like one of these things could be a coincidence. Sure, but there is a lot of them. And it only really needs one of them to kind of be real or not a coincidence. And then it's kind of like, okay, so it's real. Like really only one of these things really needs to be true. And then it means that there's something there. Maybe one or two of them is a coincidence for sure. But this, I don't know, man. I don't know. Let's keep going. He's absolutely cooking right now. Oh, and by the way, look, if you guys just... Oh, actually, no, we'll leave that. We'll keep going.
The end game, guys. The Freemasons will create artificial intelligence in Jerusalem. And this will become the world government. Again, this is just conspiracy theory. Don't believe this. This is just for fun, okay?
Of course, thank you.
But if it happens like this, then that's interesting, okay? But that is the grand plan, to create a world government in Jerusalem. And where's the center of this world government? Solomon's Temple. Because the Freemasons believe that their founder was the one who created Solomon's Temple. So by recreating Solomon's Temple, you close the circle, okay? So again, this is very complicated, and I don't want to get too many things wrong, but this is the general gist of it. And so what we can see is that all roads lead to Jerusalem. Now, that is the case, okay? Then this helps us understand certain things about the world that otherwise don't make any sense. All right, so let's go over them.
And that's what this whole video is about, guys. It is about trying to show you some theories that make the crazy, wild reality that we live in make sense. Because it doesn't really, at least not if you just go based on what's on Sky News or what's on CNN. You just think, why is this happening? Why is the government not listening to us? No one voted for these things, yet they keep on happening. This is a theory that explains it, and it ties the past into the present, and in my opinion, will more than likely predict the future as well. Tabby, not a cat, thank you very much for the 1 month. She says, I found my people. Love the weirdos. Thank you very much, Tabby. Fly Ether, my man, says, we got your back, brother. Continue being guided by love. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Max Planck. Very good, bro. Very good. And thank you very much. I have no intention of stopping. Thank you, bro. Dave Bryson says, Jason Giorgiani has covered most of this in his last 3 books. If you ain't reading them, look at this in his interviews in the past 48 months. There you go. Thank you, Dave. Dizzy Shizzy says, ramp it up, BB. Gold. I come for the weird. I stay for the Josh. Thank you very much, bro. Look, crazy topics, dark topics, but I will always try to have a bit of fun when I can. Adam Dev says, Josh, please set up a Pepe Sylvia hot button. That would be good. We should do that. Noted. Thank you. And Andrew says, I love the way he pronounces Armageddon, oh my garden, which ironically is close to what a lot of us would say if it happens. I was waiting for someone to pick up on that. I was surprised the chat didn't jump on it earlier, but yes, he does say Armageddon. And, it's cute. It's cute. I like it. Let's keep going.
The first thing that doesn't make any sense is America's war on terror. Yes, I understand that America was attacked on 9/11. I understand that. But why did they have to go attack Libya and Iraq and all these other places that had nothing to do
because they needed freedom and democracy, of course,
with Al-Qaeda? Okay? And the answer is they're trying to create something called the Greater Israel Project.
Here we go.
They're trying to have Israel become Pax Judaica.
This is what I really would encourage you guys to, if you talk about this to people with your friends and family, use this terminology, the Greater Israel Project, because that is what it is.
And power in the Middle East, because that's important in all secret societies. Israel must become the dominant power in the Middle East, okay? So this helps us understand why the war of terror happened the way it did. That's number one. Number two is, right now, America is threatening to attack Iran. Why would they do that? Because in order for Pax Judaica to come into being, Iran must be taken out of the equation. Iran must be destroyed. Then, if that were to happen, there would be no challenger to the power of Pax Judaica, okay? Does that make sense? All right?
So Iran must be taken out of the equation for Pax Judaica to come to fruition, which is basically the idea that the world is sort of controlled and led by Israel. Now, we're just going to put a little pause in this here. We're about halfway through it at the moment, 23:13, and we're going to jump to here. Now, look, I was going to show you guys before, but I mean, you can go look at it yourself. But what we're actually going to look at is this. Look, I've played this on the channel before, so we won't look at it for too long. But just so you guys know, okay, this is Bill Ryan. If you haven't seen it, this video you can see here was uploaded 15 years ago, okay? And in this video, he speaks about a whistleblower that came to him who overheard people speaking in the city of London, which we know is a central hub for the global elite. And they were speaking about how China was going to catch a cold. They were basically implying about a bioweapon that was going to be released on China. Again, this is 15 years ago. And they're also talking about moves to provoke and instigate Iran into a nuclear exchange, that there is a plan for this. And, a bioweapon on China is part of this plan. And it is to weaken the opposing countries to, what sounds like the Greater Israel Project. So we're just going to take a listen to this for maybe like 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll get back to the lecture.
And as such, he didn't really participate in the meeting. He was there as a little bit as a fly on the wall. He was just listening.
And sorry, if you haven't ever seen this, it's linked below, and I highly recommend you listen to the whole thing.
Listening to what was happening. And at first he didn't even understand what was being discussed. Now, the people there were Masons, they were senior Masons. They were about 25 or 30 people there, including senior politicians who most people in the UK would recognise by name. I do not know who they were. He didn't name them, and I didn't ask them, but he said these are well-known names. The chief of police was there, representatives from the church, representatives from the military, 25 or 30 people. And as he listened to this story being discussed, it was an informal meeting. It wasn't like a big table with kind of notepads and water glasses and minutes and an agenda and a chairman. There were just people in a room who were talking about all of this stuff. And what they were talking about was a plan that had clearly been made a long time ago. And what they were discussing was they were discussing the implementation of this plan. They were discussing how things were going, whether they were on track or not. And what, for example, to give a flavour of this, they were discussing between them some of the problems that they had in the implementation of their plan. And as this little presentation continues here, you'll realise what the plan was. And I'm going to be revealing this in very much the same way as it was revealed to our witness and as he revealed it to me, bit by bit, step by step. The first thing that he heard was they were talking about the fact that Israel didn't look as if it was getting prepared to attack Iran anytime soon. This was a problem. Even back in June 2005, they were apparently concerned that what it was that was planned on some kind of a timeline wasn't rolling out according to schedule, and this was an issue for them. So that attracted his attention very quickly, because he'd never been in a meeting when this kind of thing was discussed. Then they were talking about China and how powerful China was getting, both militarily and financially, very quickly, and that the Japanese weren't doing what they were supposed to do, which was to interfere in some way with the Chinese financial system. They weren't doing that, and this was another problem because China was getting too strong too quickly. Other things that were discussed were, for example, the coming financial crash, the centralization of resources, everything that we saw starting to happen in October 2008. They were planning that and referring to it in their meeting in June 2005. So there was clearly a rollout of some plan here, and he was quite shocked the more that he heard, and when he really realized what was happening, he was extremely shocked. And one of the reasons why I'm giving this video presentation now is to soften the blow and interpret this a little tiny bit, because it is shocking information. And what I also wanted to do is I want to try and differentiate out between what it was that he reported, because he'd heard it with his own ears, and what it is that is his speculation and my speculation about how all this fits together. It's very important information. We need to know this stuff. Even though it doesn't look like it's going to be on track, I don't think this will happen. I think that there are a bunch of crazy people there who are extremely determined to do something, and they were in a hurry, and this is important to understand. They were in a rush to try.
Interesting, right? They were in a rush. Just like that rabbi, when he was speaking to Netanyahu, was saying, like, basically, hurry up. Ramp it up, baby. We're running out of time.
Try and roll out this sequence of events. Now, what he described is what the sequence of events was. It starts with Israel attacking Iran. Now, this hasn't happened yet. There have been a number of indications that there are forces which are trying to push this into happening. You've only got to follow the news for the last 2 years to realize that the public is being prepared for a justification for this kind of thing. Iran is being set up as being the bad guys that deserve something to happen to them, and so on and so forth. Now, that's going to be the start of what is like the opening gambit in a big chess game. And the plan is to provoke Iran or China to retaliate. And our guy, our source, who is a military man, is privately as convinced as he can be, although this has never been made public and this is not publicly known, that Iran does have nuclear weapons. He believes that they have been provided by China behind the scenes. And all of this is intended because it's all right with these controlling forces that Iran has nuclear weapons, because they want them to be used.
So there you go. It seems like that there might be what you could call people provoking or trying to instigate a war or an attack. If you look at what's going on in the Middle East right now, but obviously this has been happening for a long time. This video was uploaded in 2010, and he's speaking about a meeting or something that was overheard in 2005. Okay, this goes back a long time. And the idea that they speak about China catching a cold is absolutely insane. We're going to jump back here and continue with where we were, which was about here. And then just excuse me for 1 second. I'm still listening.
Then if that would happen, there'll be no challenger to the power of Pax Judaica, okay? Does that make sense? All right. The third thing is Silicon Valley and AI. So right now you have AI, ChatGPT, which doesn't really do anything, okay? It makes cool images on your computer and helps you cheat in school, okay? That's about it. Doesn't really do anything else. And if you don't go to school, then you're like, why am I using ChatGPT? Okay? And you're not gonna pay a lot of money for it. So AI, it's a dead end. But at the same time, all around the world, everyone's spending billions, trillions of dollars on data centers, right? So everyone's putting money into AI. But then you're like, well, how can you make money off that? If you think the answer is for you to use AI, well, it's hard to make money off that. But if the answer is to create an AI surveillance state, that makes a lot more sense, right? So what is a surveillance state? Very easy, guys. We have it in China, okay? It's digital ID and digital currency.
Oh, muted. Relevant, right? Digital ID and digital currency. Very, very interesting and relevant to what's happening in Australia right now. Yvonne says, Josh, what's happening with the super chats? I don't know. I think I can see them here. The latest one's from Maggie, celebrating 5 months. And she says, best of the season to you, Josh, weirdos, and all much love and light. Thank you very much, Maggie. Lots of love to you as well. Appreciate you.
And the idea is that everything you buy, everything you do will be tracked. And so they can create a profile on you. This profile will tell the government who you are, how you behave, what you think. Not only that, the government can also manipulate how you think, how you behave, okay? And this is, of course, called the mark of the beast, right?
Manipulate what you think and how you behave. That's exactly what, I mean, that's already happening, right? We live in an information war society where there is a battle for your mind, for your thoughts, and for your beliefs, because that literally changes the world that we live in. If you can manipulate the belief of the people, you change the world. Aaron says mine works. Yeah, look, I think there is like an automatic censor system with super chats if you're saying like some rogue or risque things. So maybe you just need to be careful with what you're saying or be a bit tricky with how you say it.
And so that's what Pax Judaica is. Pax Judaica is a global AI surveillance system. Okay? It also helps us explain immigration in Europe, okay? Because the war on terror, you've sent these millions of refugees from Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq into Europe, which is causing a lot of conflict in Europe. Why would that happen? Well, for Pax Judaica to come into being, you need to destroy the world, okay? So I'm not saying this is true, but I'm saying that if the goal is Pax Judaica, it does help us connect the dots. It helps us explain why things are happening the way they are, okay? Also, the last thing is anti-Semitism, okay? So you may have noticed, if you're online, people don't like the Jews. And this is like out of nowhere. After October 7th, you have anti-Semitism over the internet. Now, I have criticized Israel before, okay? But anti-Semitism is not the same thing as anti-Zionism, right? Zionism is the belief that Israel is a chosen people and the promised land and all that, okay? But Judaism as religion, it's perfectly fine. So why would people not care about the difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, okay? And you can argue it's all purposeful because remember, the part of the plan is to force the Jews to return to Israel. That's very important for this plan to work out, okay? It's key. That's why you are seeing so much anti-Semitism around the world today. Okay? And the last thing, of course, and this is something we'll discuss.
This is interesting as well. Look, just a little side note for those of you that were kind of keeping up to date with the Bondi Massacre, which, you know, was interestingly something I noticed that, like, as soon as it was happened, there were a lot of, like, Jewish outlets reporting on it, like, instantly. One of them being Avi Yemeni from Rebel News. And, you know, he kind of goes around with a microphone and just generally, like, seems to, you know, annoy and, like, interrogate people and get into, like, debates, like, just get into very, like, heated debates with people. Interestingly, with what he just said about how, you know, the idea of this plan of this manufactured anti-Semitism is for the Jews to go back to Israel. Like, that's part of the plan. After the Bondi Massacre, Avi Yemeni, who actually flew in, right? He covered the Bondi Massacre from, I don't know where, maybe Israel, but he flew in as soon as it happened to Australia to cover it as a journalist would on the ground, right, in Australia. And then maybe a day or two later, he made a post saying, like, I don't know if I feel safe in Australia anymore. I think, like, I'm thinking about moving back to Israel, which is really interesting, right? Because he's a massive mouthpiece for, you know, Australian Jews. And so for him to say something like that, when his whole kind of narrative is about, you know, right-wing Jews in Australia, that's what the whole channel is about, really. It's very Australian focused. So for him to say that and hear this in this presentation is very interesting.
Is something called the red heifers. So red heifers are red cows that are perfectly genetically modified. And you need the red heifers in order to, you have to sacrifice the red heifers to purify the ground in order to reconstruct the Solomon's temple, okay? And guess what? They've already sacrificed the red heifers. So it seems as though everything is in place. All right, they're moving towards Pax Judaica. All right, so let's discuss what will happen in the short term and in the long term if Pax Judaica really is the end goal, okay? So right now you have Israel fighting wars everywhere, okay? The main enemy right now is Iran. In Europe, you have the Europeans about to go to war with Russia in Ukraine. America right now is threatening to attack Venezuela, okay? South America. You have 10% of the US Navy in the Caribbean, and they're about to attack Venezuela. You have China and...
Is Rebel News Canadian or separate outlets with the same name? I think he runs the Australian arm of it. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure of that. But it's at least it's a thing in Australia.
Japan, at conflict. You have India here. And you have Africa. Okay? So what's going to happen in the short term? Okay, well, what we know is that Europe is planning to go to war with Russia. Europe is about to go to war with Russia, okay? At the same time, you have a lot of immigrants in Europe. And this is going to create civil wars in Europe, okay? Civil war. So you have both war with Russia as well as civil war. So Europe is kind of screwed, okay?
Yep.
America has the same situation where the left-right divide is so polarized that eventually they'll go to war. If you read the news, you may have heard about the shootings at Brown University, as well as there's MIT physicists who were shot, okay?
Yep.
So random violence will be more and more common in the United States. And you could argue that's all deliberate because the idea is this. Let's just say you have a jar. You put red ants in a jar and black ants in a jar. They get along fine. But you take the jar and you just shake it up, and now they're at war with each other, okay? That's what's happening where the left and right, they really don't like each other. They don't talk to each other, and they refuse to engage in debate with each other. But they're not going to fight each other unless there's violence. In which case,
Put it on a t-shirt. Artificial chaos. Manufactured conflict.
their tribal mentality takes over and they start killing each other, okay? So we can expect civil war in the United States. Then you're gonna have the Americans start to attack Venezuela and possibly other countries in South America. So America is in for a bad time, okay? China, yeah, I mean, Japan and China and India, they're all gonna have conflicts with each other. But also what we should expect is that America starts to embargo China, meaning America uses its sea power to block China from accessing resources from overseas. And China imports most of its oil and a lot of its food. So if there's a blockade of China, you can expect the Chinese economy to really suffer, okay? All right, and then what we can expect to happen is America at some point will go to war with Iran, and this will destroy both countries, okay? Iran will not lose this war, but it won't win this war either because America is just gonna bomb the crap out of Iran. It's just gonna send Iran back decades. But America will lose this war, but this is important because if America loses this war, it's forced out of the Middle East. And once it's forced out of the Middle East, all its military assets goes to Israel, which creates the Pax Judaica. Does that make sense, guys? That's the plan. Okay, now you have Pax Judaica. And what Pax Judaica will do is start to control the world. Because through chaos and conflict, Pax Judaica can make a lot of money, right? Because Pax Judaica, what's going to happen is that you have these technology companies like Google, they're going to move over to Pax Judaica and build a global surveillance state. You have civil wars, you need AI to control people. If you're going to war with Russia, you need weapons, okay? But you also need financing as well. So you can expect a lot of banks to move to Israel, and it's possible Israel becomes now the global reserve currency because everyone is trading with Israel. If you're Russia, you need to trade with, you need to trade your resources, right? Oil, energy, and grain, okay? So Russia controls a third of the world's carbohydrates. Guess what, guys? Israel controls Africa. So what will happen is that Russia and other countries will sign a trade agreement with Israel, and Israel becomes a center of global trade. Okay? Does that make sense? So this is how...
Ironically, so was the Khazarian Mafia. That's how they were so successful, because they were central to global trade.
How Pax Judaica will profit. And remember that Israel has the world's best intelligence agency, the Mossad. And what they can do is go around the world and create as much chaos as possible. Okay? So while the world is burning, Israel, Pax Judaica, is profiting. And that's what the future looks like for the next 10, 20 years. And this will, of course, lead to the rise of the Antichrist.
God damn it.
Who will take control of Pax Judaica and force the world to eventually attack Israel in something called the War of Gog and Magog.
So where's Australia in all of this? Left out of it, I hope. Rob, be quiet. Don't say anything. We don't want them to notice us. We don't want them to notice us.
This will, of course, lead to the second coming of Jesus. So that's a grand plan, okay? Right? Any questions? Does it make sense to you guys?
Just smile and say, "G'day, mate."
And you know what? I could be a complete idiot, okay? I could just making all this up. But you have to ask yourself 3 questions. Does it connect the past? Does it explain what's happened in the past? Does it explain what's happening today? And will these things happen in the future, okay? So we haven't lived through the future yet, but you can see the trends. Yeah, Vincent?
Vincent has a question.
Like you said that AI, they will, God, create lives and create AI at Jerusalem. But I think, ChatGPT, they already create AI in Silicon Valley.
Okay, ChatGPT is not AI. It's an LLM, okay? Artificial intelligence is a
Sit down, Vincent.
thinking, conscious, sentient force. That's like God. So they're trying to create God in Jerusalem, okay? Out of Solomon's temple. Does that make sense? Okay? Any more questions before we go to the PPT?
He didn't really answer the question very thoroughly, to be fair. Free Vincent.
But you guys understand what's happening, right? Okay, let's go to the PPT. And again, guys, it's all just speculation on my part. I have no idea what will happen, okay? Like everyone else.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is just for entertainment.
Guys, the Promised Land. This is the Greater Israel Project.
Bop and run.
Okay, this is what Yahweh promised to Abraham in the Bible. As you can see, it's pretty huge. It's the entire Middle East. It extends from the Nile to the Euphrates in Iraq. Okay, it's a huge area. And if you say the Israelis want to achieve the Greater Israel Project, they call you a conspiracy theorist. So we don't want that, okay? But explain 2 things to me. First of all, why is the Greater Israel map on a chevron of an IDF soldier, okay? These are soldiers, Israeli soldiers. They wear the insignia of the Greater Israel Project, okay? This is the map. Also, if you look at the flag of Israel, there are 2 blue lines, right? These represent rivers, the Nile and the Euphrates. All right? So if it's a conspiracy theory, then how do you explain these 2 things? All right, but I want to argue you know what? Pax Judaica, it's not about Israel or the Greater Israel Project. What it is ultimately is an alliance of transnational capital, multinationals like Google and Meta, and intelligence agencies that will be based in Jerusalem, okay? So secret societies will be based in Jerusalem, and they will use it as a headquarters for their global conspiracy. But, and they will profit from chaos and conflict around the world because they think that this is the culmination of the prophecy. But it doesn't necessarily mean that Jews will be in charge. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Okay, so it's a much more idea than people think it is. All right. So where do we get this stupid idea from? Okay, it actually starts with Isaac Newton. So Isaac Newton, you learn about him in physics class. You learn that he's the founder of calculus. You learn about Newtonian mechanics. Okay, but actually these are just side projects of his. That was not his focus. He spent most of his life focusing on reading the Bible to understand the grand plan of God. And he wrote a book called Observations upon the Prophecy of Daniel and the Apocalypse of St. John, okay? That's where his focus was. And he believed he found the Bible code. And he was a member of secret societies. He was a member of the British elite. And if someone like Isaac Newton is telling you, this is what the Bible says, and this guy who found a calculus and who developed the 3 laws of motion, you'll probably believe him, okay? But the guy was insane. All right, so what he did was he looked at certain sections of the Bible and put them together into a story about, okay? And so this is Ezekiel 37. And so Ezekiel 37 says that the Lord God tells the prophet Ezekiel that, yes, I've scattered the people of Israel, but now I bring them back together. And then I will make your nation great. I will make flowers bloom. I will make your city prosperous, okay? And this is all in the Bible. Ezekiel 38 says that eventually there'll be a war of Gog and Magog, when Gog and Magog will come invade Israel, but God will come and defend Israel, and he will destroy Gog and Magog. And if you read the Bible, we don't have time to read the Bible, but it's really violent language. So the Israelis believed that for heaven to come, there first must be hell on earth. All right, so Newton's plan to force second coming, okay? And this becomes the basis of Freemasonry, right? Freemasons were really invented in order to promote the second coming plan. The Freemasons were first in England, but then where did they go? They went to America. Many of the founding fathers of America, including Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, were Freemasons. So America was founded in many ways to achieve this plan, okay? So what's the plan? Well, you have to first reconstitute the nation of Israel and make it prosper, okay? It's really important that it becomes very wealthy. And in fact, Israel is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. You have to have the Jewish diaspora return to Israel, and that means you promote prosperity, but you also have to promote a Jewish conspiracy. So while you're letting the Jews get rich in the West, you're also promoting the idea that the Jews control the world. Okay, it's all part of this plan. You have to rebuild Solomon's temple. You have to have the war of Gog and Magog. You have to have the Antichrist. You have to have Armageddon, okay? And this will force Jesus to return and usher in the millennium age.
Oh my
Does that
God.
make sense? That's a grand plan. And unfortunately, most of these things have been achieved, okay? These are the Freemasons, and the top leadership is focused on achieving this plan developed by Newton. Eventually,
Is it just me? And I've noticed this before when looking at depictions of Freemasons. I don't know if it's actually Freemasons exclusively or maybe just like the way people were depicted in these older illustrations. But their legs, the lower legs look like goat legs. Like the way that it, like from the knee, it kind of kicks back before it comes down forwards to the ankle. Has anyone else ever noticed that? It's fucking weird.
what happened is that Adam Weishaupt will found the Illuminati with Jacob Frank, and they will infiltrate Freemasons. And why do the Freemasons allow Adam Weishaupt and the Illuminati to infiltrate the Freemasons? Because Jews are an important part of this plan. They need Jews in place. They need Jews to go back to Jerusalem and build the nation of Israel and conquer the world in order for this plan to work out, okay?
Part man, part goat. Yeah, look, I don't know. I don't know what that's about. I mean, you know, also the goat is obviously like very synonymous with like Satan as well. But that's probably also just a coincidence, number 4106, obviously.
So it is an alliance between the Freemasons and the Illuminati. This is Rothschild, and Rothschild will establish many branches throughout Europe, okay? Jacob Frank, we've discussed in the past. But this is a major alliance, okay? All right. Once we understand that it's these secret societies and their grand plan in motion, now it helps us understand why things turn out the way they did. For example, now we understand where British philosophy comes from. We discussed last class about John Locke, David Hume, Bentham, Mill, Marx, Darwin, okay? These were all thinkers sponsored by Britain to promote a certain understanding of the world that is materialistic. And
these motherfuckers. These are the motherfuckers who did it.
Will build foundation for the second coming, okay? So John Locke said, private property is what's important.
These motherfuckers are the reason we have Love Island today, okay? These are the motherfuckers who planted the seeds.
David Hume, philosophy is pointless. Don't think about God. Just focus on material wealth. Jeremy Bentham, utility is everything, okay? How do we know what's good, what's right? If it benefits someone, okay? John Stuart Mill, liberty of the individual is everything. So making sure that people are individually happy as opposed to being spiritual. Karl Marx, freedom of the individual from material want. Charles Darwin, man is a monkey, okay? So this is promoting a certain worldview that will help promote the second coming. All right. So look, if you just look at science, there are certain things they study and certain things they don't study. For example, they spend a lot of time studying particle physics. Who cares? Can I ask you this question? Who cares about particle physics? They spend billions, trillions of dollars on this stupid thing. They built something called the CERN partitor to figure out what the underlying atom is, okay? Is it really important? Isn't solving world poverty more important? I don't know. You can take all that money you spend on Super Collider and make sure everyone in the world has enough to eat. They don't want to do that, though. All right? You also have focus on outer space, AI, okay? So the very direction of science, it's very, very specific, okay? They're trying to achieve a materialist understanding of the world. And also, if you try to, this is the, again, I don't understand why they're spending trillions of dollars on this stupid thing. This is the current collider, LXC, in Switzerland, and now they're going to build a bigger one. And you see how big it is, right? What are they trying to do here? Are they really trying to figure out particle physics? Maybe.
I mean, that's crazy. I didn't know that they were building one this big. Like, I don't know if you guys saw, but just behind him, there's a smaller circle. You can see a little bit from his forearm to his shoulder. That's the one that we have right now. And this is the one that they want to build. What the fuck are you guys doing there? Please.
Maybe not. All right.
Look at the difference. LHC 27-kilometer radius is the one that we have, and this green one is what they want to build. What is so important that you guys are doing down there? Please.
All right, guys. Jacob Frank. What Jacob Frank tells us is there are different dimensions.
We can all please turn our cell phones off while the professor is speaking. Thank you.
Okay? And another dimension is Big Brother, who's a friend of his, but he's stuck in his dimension. He's trying to come to our dimension, but he needs our help. So what's certain particle accelerator trying to do, right? Is it really trying to discover particle physics, or is it really trying to break the dimensions, like they did with the nuclear bomb? Okay, do you understand? People believe the nuclear bomb, it was really about creating an interdimensional portal for Big Brother to come into. And now people are saying, is it possible the CERN particle accelerator is trying to bring in these interdimensional demons to our world to conquer us, to enslave us?
There's no way Dave Bryson just put in a super chat at £5, which translates to $6.66 in kangaroo dollars while he's talking about portals opening up to let in demons. Dave Bryson, sir, are you a demon? Are you a demon, yes or no? No, I'm just kidding, brother. He says, certainly. I see what you did there. If you were smashing atoms and particles together, you'd be opening up portals. Gimps. My man, thank you very much. Aaron Clark says, mine works with the super chat test. Thank you, Aaron. Zach Beach says, the AI bubble is going to bust so hard. Interesting choice of words, brother. Hopefully for the good. I hope you mean that in a good way. We'll see. Ra Clark with a super chat test. Thank you. Yvonne, thank you very much for the $2. Benjamin Dickens says, I think the big rush is due to the spiritual awakening on the planet and its acceleration due to its location in the universe. Look into Cryon, sorry. Look, let's hope that's the case, and let's hope that we win. I've never heard of Cryon, though. Thank you, bro. Ken Wallman says, thank you, Josh, for sharing this with us all. No problem. My pleasure. Toxic Fart says, Josh using profanity is butter to my ears. And we did Dave's as well. All right, let's keep going. We've only got a few minutes of this left.
That would make a lot more sense than particle physics, okay, guys? All right. What does science not study, okay? It doesn't study consciousness, which is the number one problem in the world, right? Wouldn't it be nice to know how we think, okay? Wouldn't it be nice to know how I come up with the ideas I do in class and teach it to you, and how you respond to my ideas? Which is a much more basic problem in particle physics. We don't do that, guys, okay? There's absolutely no money or very limited funding in the study of consciousness. Imagination, intuition, anything in material spirit, okay? Like ghosts or spirits, we don't study at all. Religious truth. We also don't study kindness, happiness, and love, okay?
Yeah. Who would want to study that? That's not important. Kindness, happiness, love. Nah, don't need it. Weapons. More weapons, more weapons, more weapons. What the fuck is going on here?
We don't study what is the basis of these things. We don't care. We don't study telepathy, connection. We don't study intelligence of animals and plants. We also don't study ancient architecture and civilizations. So if you go to these ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe, we discussed Göbekli Tepe before, we only have uncovered 5% of it, okay? We don't care what is underneath Göbekli Tepe.
No, because we just want more bombs, bombs, weapons, missiles, guns, kill, war, death, tragedy. Yes, yes. That is the West, baby. Come on. We don't need love, kindness, religion, truth, and telepathy. What are you talking about?
Because it's possible that if we were to discover everything, then it would refute traditional paradigms of the world, including evolution. All right? So science is focused on spreading one particular paradigm about the world and discounting everything else. All right? So why is that? Okay.
Good question. Good question. Why is that? So, why is that? Anyone know? And does anyone have an answer as to why that would be?
Another thing that's really interesting about science is it hasn't really improved in the past 50, 70 years. We're spending billions, trillions of dollars on science, but we haven't really improved science that much. There have been no great discoveries. And there are three reasons why, okay? The first is specialization. You're only allowed to focus on one very specific problem. And
Uber Dork, great answer. You can't profit off of love. My man, put it on a t-shirt. Although I would say you can't monetarily profit from love. Although your life would probably become enriched exponentially. But that's right. You're not making money. You're not making money off love. And I think that's why.
Without generalists, without being able to think of science very broadly, it's hard to come up with new discoveries. All right? The other thing is you have a very strict bureaucracy. So as a scientist, you spend most of your time actually applying for funding. You actually don't spend most of your time trying to solve the problems of the universe. And the third thing is credentialism, where if you don't have a certain PhD and you don't belong to a major research university, you're not allowed to talk about science. Okay? So because of these three reasons, it's hard to do science. It's hard to discover truth. And that's the intention.
That's our science. Don't you go talking about our science, okay? That's ours. Fly says, whoever said watch the CERN opening ceremony was correct. Creepy goats and shit. Bro, you're going to have to send me that. Can you link me that in Discord, please? I'll check that out. We might watch it on a stream.
Intention is to prevent people from discovering the truth of the world, okay? Now, science is not very good at creating new things, but it's very good at faking things.
Yep.
Okay? It's very good at faking things.
Yeah, it is.
So guys, it's possible they might fake something else, called an alien invasion.
Yep.
Science is very good at that. It's not good at creating spaceships, but it's good at faking spaceships, okay? There's a difference.
Great at it. Great at faking things. Absolutely. And I think that's probably something that we need to be aware of that relates to everything that we've just looked at. But that is the end of today's class. Thank you for coming, everyone. Report back here at 7 a.m. for your next class. No, I'm just kidding. But that is the end of the show today, guys. Look, thank you. Again, I hope the message is clear. I think, we went through it enough. I don't need to repeat myself with what I said at the start. But the point of this is about awareness. Okay, we want people to not even believe everything that we just looked at, but be aware of it. Keep it in the back pocket. Some of it might sound crazy. Some of it might seem hard to digest. And I totally get that. But just remember it. And as things continue to unfold, as I'm sure they will, see how that framework fits with those things. And you might start to have that little light bulb moment on what seems to actually be going on in the world, because it's far more complex than all the Jews or it's the Muslims. It's far more complex than that. And it runs back a long time. So I hope you guys learned something. We like to keep it a little bit educational sometimes. Professor Polarity, thank you, Roy. I appreciate that, but I can't take the credit. I'm just the conduit, okay? I'm just bringing it to you guys. That is Professor Zhang. And by the way, that was only half of his lecture. The full lecture is linked below. And look, that's the first video of his that I've seen, but there is a whole library there of stuff like that. And I'm sure it won't be the last time that we see him on the channel. If you did enjoy the stream, guys, please slap a like on it. You can support me by becoming a member, get access to members-only content, members-only live streams too, and the members section of the Discord, which is a great place to hang out. We've also got 20% off for Christmas off of our merch store here. All of this stuff, what the hell is going on tees? We've got touch grass tees and caps because, what better message to put on a t-shirt or a hat to let everyone know in this crazy world to just please get outside, take a deep breath, and touch some grass. So Weirdo Xmas at the checkout for that one. And or you can buy me a copy down below. But at the end of the day, I just appreciate you guys hanging out with me, enjoying the live streams, and digging into all of this craziness with with a positive vibe. That's what means the most to me. So guys, enjoy the rest of your Saturday or your Friday night. Be good to each other. And we may see you guys tomorrow, but if not, I will be back on Monday. Take care. Peace.
Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.